But let me come back to the studio and have this conversation with Dr. Awutu Senya. Doc, let me focus a little bit. I know we wanted to talk about the president's constituency. We'll talk about that. But because we have brought in the Awutu Senya East, let's talk a little bit about that. You have monitored this constituency, haven't you?
So, a little bit.
A little bit. During the registration, we know what happened during the registration. It was chaotic. There were gunshots. We heard those gunshots. We heard also what the Minister for Special Initiative, Awutu Senya, came to say. Subsequently, the CID, at the press conference held by the IGP, told us that it is part of a number of cases they are still investigating. What do you make of that and how it impacts on what happens in this particular constituency right now?
I think one of the beauty of democracy is the existence of democratic institutions, and then the ability of those institutions to regulate the behavior of citizens and institutions within the country. I believe what happened during the registration process and the subsequent way it was handled in terms of investigation and identifying the perpetrators and punishing them has actually emboldened people to do worse. You know, the way the shooting incident happened during the registration exercise has not created enough deterrence for people to be able to feel that the law is very important and supreme. I believe that if people were arrested as part of what happened during the registration process and prosecuted, there will have been that element of deterrence. In an election day, whether it is closer to the polling station or far away from the polling station, people who are not designated security agencies must not wield weapons, not to talk of even firing those weapons. It creates a little bit of intimidation. It creates a little bit of fear, and it creates a little bit of panic. And when you have fear, panic, and intimidation, people feel that they are not safe enough to exercise their franchise. And one of the things we all want moving forward is to have a serene, enabling environment for every citizen to exercise their franchise. It is very important because we always say that the outcome is not what we are looking for, but we are looking at the processes that goes into the outcome. If the processes are genuine, free, and fair, free from intimidation, and then deemed to be fair, then the outcome is holistically accepted. But when there are these pockets of violence and all these intimidation going on, whether it is related to the elections or not, but it's closer to the polling station, and today is an election day, people will definitely read meanings into it and do create a little bit of suspicion. And those things doesn't add up well to the quality of elections in a democracy. And we look at the Ayawaso West Wagon case, people believe the shooting happened far away from the polling station and not exactly at the polling station. But look at the effect.
It actually did take place really, really close to the... And those are details that perhaps we should get from the police. If you say it didn't happen at the polling station.
How close was it to the polling station?
How close was it?
Because people can hear the sound. Yes. No matter how far it is from this polling station, those sounds will definitely create panic and people will act to it. So I think moving forward, we need to be up to the game and make sure that some of these things don't happen so that people are not deterred from going out to exercise their franchise. And
I really wish that we were able to pull up for you the database and the figures and what they say about what has happened in this particular constituency and why it has become so heated in this year. Now, if you look at the 2012 elections, Awutu Senya did win that particular constituency for the NPP. In 2016, she's held on to that particular seat. Doc, you could say perhaps that there is a certain push and pull factor happening in this particular Awutu Senya East constituency, which is making you see, for most of the parties that don't own a particular seat, they're upping their game and pushing very hard to either at least make some gains there or get the seat. Could we safely say that this is the reason why we're having some of these issues? I think I'm being told to hang on briefly. I need to connect with Israel Lai, who is at the EC's headquarters right now. He's with Dr. Sribo Kweku, who, well, there you have it. Let's quickly go there and find out what is happening. We're still halfway through the voting. Israel, I'm going to hand over to you. Talk to Dr. Sribo. Let's see what's happening.
We're still halfway through the voting. Israel, I'm going to hand over to you. Talk to Dr. Sribo. Let's see what's happening.
All right, so it has to do with two incidents that have been recorded with ballot issuers who are short-changing or short-issuing the ballots. So when you take the ballot paper, you're supposed to have all the candidates on the ballot. But it turns out that for some, what they do is they take out one candidate. There have been two incidents, or there have been a number of incidents, and Dr. Sripo Kweku, who is the Director of Elections, is going to be talking to us about all of that in a moment. There was one incident that happened in the Upper East region, and there was another incident that happened at Awutu Senya West. So tell us, what exactly were the reports that you got?
First, we have that of the Upper East one in Boko. And information...
Which specific polling station?
Alaji something somewhere in Boko, but I can't correct it. Alaji Salam Chainsaw Mill or something in Boko. They had detached two of the ballot papers, but the person did not detach it to include the serial number and the first candidate, Nana Akufo-Addo. So in that case, the ballot paper doesn't have the serial number. So clearly, you cannot use the ballot paper. So that will be declared not avoid. But we have asked the police to arrest the person. So officially, it has been reported to the police, and the person has been arrested by the police for the person to explain why he did that.
So this happened in Boku Central. There was one incident at Boku Central, but there was also another incident at Awutu Senya.
That I'm not sure if you're the police station, but the Boku one, the person detached first one, that one was used, but the second one was vigilant. So he said, the ballot paper is not complete. So even though it was detached, that ballot paper was not used. So it was one of the ballot papers that went through. Then Awutu Senya West too. Also, the person detached to, they couldn't use any of them.
Okay.
So they are all females. She too has been arrested by the police.
So the ballot issuers who were involved, you're saying they are both females?
Yes.
Now, what happens to that one person in the Upper East region, Boku Central, who may have gone to drop a ballot that's not complete, which essentially you say will be a spoiled ballot? Rejected ballot.
So that person, the voter should have been a bit vigilant, like it happened to the second person. So you have a right, and you also have a responsibility. Once it has gone into the ballot box, he has lost the vote. You cannot do anything about it.
It wasn't this person's fault. The person was issued a ballot paper or short issued a ballot paper. How can it be their fault?
It is your responsibility to ensure that you have. That's why you say that the ballot paper itself should be validated. It is your responsibility to check that your ballot paper has been validated. It's your responsibility to know that the ballot paper contains all the candidates. So you have a right, but that right goes with responsibility. So the second person was able to identify that. So the first person should have been identified. Because that now, how are you going to identify the voter? And if you even identify the person in accounting for the ballot, the ballot box will be more than one. So once it has gone into the ballot box, you can't have the person.
All right, but it's at least presents us an opportunity to warn the people out there, the viewers, the people who are voting, of their responsibilities. What exactly are they supposed to do? When you take the ballot, you're supposed to make sure you have all the candidates plus the serial number.
Correct. And also you turn the back and check whether it has been validated. It is your responsibility to do that.
All right, so these are the incidents that we're talking. Okay, so that's the video showing on your screen now, where it turns out that the ballot paper was short issued, but that's the full ballot, which you can see on your screen. It's supposed to be a full ballot and also should have the serial number on top of it. So if you're giving a ballot paper and it's short, you should make sure that they correct it for you or give you the correct ballot paper,
and,
the full ballot.
And the ballot paper should be reported for him or her to be arrested, because it's a criminal act.
All right. So there you have it. And you should all be vigilant out there when you go to want to cast your votes. Don't just take the ballot paper. Examine the ballot paper. Make sure it is complete. Most importantly, as Dr. Sripo Kweku is saying, you should have the serial number on top of it. If you don't have the serial number on top of it, it will be rejected. It will be a rejected ballot.
And so you amend that you have wasted your time.
All right. So that's it. I'll be here with Dr. Sribo Kweku when we have updates or we have additional information. We're going to be sharing that with you. Back to you, Gift, in the studio.
Well, Israel, I wanted to find out from Dr. Sribo Kweku whether this was deliberate. I mean, do the investigations show that this was deliberately done, or was it, I mean, a pure mistake?
Okay, so Dr. Sribo Kweku.
In elections, you cannot underrate such a thing. A ballot issuer issuing a ballot paper without the full complement of the candidates, without the serial number of the ballot paper, then what other reason can you give apart from being mischievous? So this is why you don't need to investigate. It's clear mischievous and criminal. So we should treat it as such.
All right. So two persons, there are two persons involved, as Dr. Sribo Kweku said, and they have both been arrested.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so they've been arrested because you suspect they deliberately did this.
Oh, it is not a suspicion. They have done it, so it's not suspicion. Because the fact is that it's anybody who has gone through the training knows that the ballot paper has a serial number. So in the first place, the question you should ask, even when you are sorting out the ballot paper, with any ballot paper without a serial number will be rejected. So if you are giving a ballot paper without a serial number, how are you going to account for it? Let alone taking out the serial number plus one of the candidates. It's just criminal act. That's
okay. Do you expect more of this to be happening across, because it took a vigilant voter to point this out?
There are, as at now, you know, we have 38,662. So we have this in only 2. And that's why we have taken them up, and we are announcing to the public that such things are criminal act, and anybody who perpetuates it will be arrested and dealt with.
Right.
So if anybody has an intention of also repeating that, then the person should be ready for the same sequence of events, and they will be treated as criminals.
Okay, so this is Awutu Senya West. Israel, thank you very much for that.
The most important bit is that people should know, they should be vigilant when they are giving their ballot papers. They should look at it, examine it, and ensure that it has everything, the full complement, especially the serial number on top of it.
All right. Israel, thank you. I'm sure that we'll be crossing over to you for any developing story that comes up from your side. But Israel Lai there with Dr. Sribo Kweku of the Electoral Commission there. Now, that's a very interesting story there. You had Awutu Senya West, where someone got Dr. Alidu, someone got a ballot sheet that doesn't have the number 1 because it was torn at a point where it cut off that part of the ballot sheet. What do you see from what is happening right now? Dr. Sribo Kweku says this looks like a deliberate act, so the people involved have been arrested.
So when we are talking about fraud in elections, it comes in 2 forms. We have what we call the ballot fraud and then the procedural fraud. The procedural fraud is where you circumvent the procedures that leads to how people vote. So maybe rather than advertising a polling station, you mislead people to go to a different place. Rather than maybe arriving earlier before the voting time, you arrive late, delay in some, all those constitute procedural fraud. But one of the serious challenges has to do with ballot fraud. It's about stuffing of the ballot box. It's about not stamping at the back of the ballot box. It's about tearing a particular candidate out of the ballot box. All these are part of ballot fraud in elections, and they go a long way to undermine the quality of the elections. I agree with Dr. Kweku that this might be a very deliberate attempt, because I believe all the polling agents were trained. They know, they understand that one of the ways you can identify.
Take a look at this document. You see, it looks pretty bulky. You see, it looks pretty bulky. So if you're trying to tear off one of them, and that should come with the serial number. You see the way the document looks like. It looks as if it's so bulky that at the top, I'm not saying it wasn't deliberate. I'm just looking at what we're seeing on TV right now and trying to read my own meanings into it. That if you take a look at that bulky document that we just saw, tearing something off of it could be.
So my understanding of this is that all the polling agents, the EC officials who work there have been trained. And they understand that the serial number is one of the most important identifiable number in every, sheet that you give to people to go and vote. So if you tear one part of the rule without the serial number, you should be able to know. And this, if it has happened just once or twice, maybe say it's a mistake, but it has been consistent. So I tend to believe that fine, we are just alleging that maybe it's intentional, but maybe they will have to prove their innocence in the court of competent jurisdiction. But my initial thinking is that this is a deliberate act, and then maybe they should allow them to prove themselves innocent, given the chance and the due process to be.
Does it bother you that somebody who will be leading, for example, if any investigation should go on as the AC's director of research there, who we just spoke to, seems to have already made up his mind that this was deliberate? Is that something to worry about?
I don't think it would be fair to just say it's deliberate. For example,
because you heard him, right?
Yeah, you should give them the benefit. Maybe you can say that you suspect it is deliberate, or you assume that maybe what they are doing may be deliberate. But you give all those. I think it is just a court of competent jurisdiction that have the right to pronounce them guilty. So I think we should give them the benefit of the doubt. It could be that it's a mistake, but I'm also looking at the consistency with which it has occurred, but also the background training that these people are supposed to go through, and knowing the importance of the serial number in every ballot that we give out to the people, and deliberately taking that part out, in addition to another candidate, smacks of kind of conspiracy. So I still believe, notwithstanding this, I still believe we should give them we should assume they are innocent until a court of competent jurisdiction pronounce them otherwise. Okay,
let me take you back to the Awutu Senya East constituency, which you were talking about. The situation, what happened during the registration, the chaos that happened during the registration. There was a gunshot. It looks like the place is synonymous with gunshot. Today we've had another gunshot and the police is investigating. You were making a point that sometimes the history, the historical way that we have addressed a particular incident has a way of making it repeat itself, because then it gives people the power, or it gives people the enablement to act with impunity, which is what you think has happened in Awutu Senya West. You were making that point.
Yeah, I mentioned the fact that how we approach an alleged criminal act creates that element of what? Create that element of
it creates the impunity, right?
Not impunity, I think deterrence.
Okay.
That's the word I wanted to use. So if you approach a case and investigate it to the logical conclusion, and there's a belief that people did the wrong thing, then the law must take its course. Once we are able to do things this way, then people know that the law exists, and it creates that element of deterrence that we need in our society. After all, laws are meant to regulate our lives as people and to make us live a cherished life as a society. So once we begin to know that if I do this, nothing will happen to me, as it was evidenced in the registration process, people are emboldened to commit serious atrocities if nothing happens to them. And I believe that over a long period of time, these are some of the factors that has reduced people's level of trust in our security institutions. And it has a lot of implication and connection to the recent case of political parties forming vigilante groups, because they believe that I'm not sure how true it was, but the processes was that the CID officer who was investigating that case was either transferred or something happened to him and he had to discontinue. If this was true and very deliberate, then it suggests that we are not actually helping to restore confidence in the security institution as people. And once we begin to do this, people know that, oh, it happened during the registration and nothing happened. Why won't I do the same? And it also makes people to believe that other than resorting to the law and legitimate ways of addressing grievances, people can take the law into their own hands and then go away with it. So that kind of historical antecedents emboldens people to do or repeat what has happened in the past, knowing very well that nothing is going to happen to them. And once we begin to create that mentality, then we let everybody loose and people will begin to defend themselves. Political parties will begin to defend their interests rather than leave it to the police service.
I mean, I don't know the strength of the security services in this particular constituency at this at this point, but we're expecting that they will bring a handle on this. But the police has also made it clear, or at least made the deliberate attempt to clarify this, that this does not happen at a polling station. It could be an any day security issue. It could be an any day, criminal issue. Someone has an issue with someone, they decide to score it, on the day of election, couldn't it?
Yeah, it's a possibility. But you see, it is very easy to connect, it's circumstantial to the electoral processes. We know that people we've seen what happened last year at the Ayawaso West Wagon, and people are alert. And that's why, because of these happenings, people have done a lot of civil society organizations, the media, everybody is campaigning for peace, and then there was a peace agreement signed by all the parties, because we didn't want this to happen. So I believe one of the serious challenges to our everyday security issues and security problems has to do with events like this. When it is very close to the police station or reasonably closer to polling stations, people will definitely read political meanings into it. So I believe that if we are able to, at least as much as possible, up our game, security, I'm talking to the security institutions, and make sure that these things do not happen. In election day, very close to a polling station, people definitely read political meanings into it.
I see. But take out Awutu Senya East, take out Awutu Senya West, where we had the ballot sheet issue. Take out. In fact, there were a few isolated cases of yellow ink that came up. Apparently, it's part of the process for today. It looks like the communication just didn't go down well. Let me just isolate that bit of the conversation. The issue about the yellow link. Does it really matter in the scheme of affairs?
I'm not very sure, but I believe there should have been two things are important here: consistency and communication. One, if the EC is going to procure documents or materials for use in an election day, it is important that they are very consistent with the materials that they use, so that when you see something different from what other people are using, it raises your suspicion and you are able to challenge the process. So once it is open up for different filtration, when you don't bring that element of consistency in procurement process, it opens up the door for people to infiltrate things that will either help them win or help the other to lose. So consistency is very important. The second has to do with communication. Even where there are reasons that you are not able to procure the same material or the same instrument for everybody across board, then you have to communicate. We are not able to do this because of this and this and this. So in this particular polling stations or this number of polling stations, this is likely going to happen, and in other polling stations, that is likely going to happen. It opens up the process to transparency, and people are able to raise questions and complain and then protest when they believe that the right thing is not done, or what is being done is not consistent with what is normal. Then it gives that element of suspicion, and then they can raise it up, and then it will be quickly addressed. So once we are not able to be consistent, and then we don't communicate early enough, it brings so much suspicion and mistrust. And people, once they lose election, they'll definitely find reasons they'll definitely find reasons to blame institutions and actors why they lost. So I think we need to be very consistent and communicate promptly to be able to avert some of these things.
Well, you're still on your election headquarters. We're on Joy 99.7 FM, also on Love 99.5 FM in Kumasi. We're here on your JoyNews channel. We are on DSTV 421, GoTV 144. Our social media handles are all active. If you're on your phone, you certainly know where to get your election information. My name is Gifty Amdopi. I'm doing this with Benjamin Akakbo, I beg your pardon, who is in studio 997. I have here in studio at the JoyNews studios, Dr. Awutu Senya, who is a political scientist. We've looked at the trends. We're looking at the developing stories, what's happening as we are voting.